There is a window, barred, on the second floor of a former monastery in the south of France, and behind it, a man looking out. He sees a sleeping village, a dark cypress tree twisting like a black flame, and a sky that is not still but alive, a swirling, breathing cosmos of cobalt, ultramarine, and brilliant gold. This is more than a view, it's a vision, a prayer even, a revolution in oil painting. Welcome to the Art of the Matter. I'm your host, Nicola, and tonight we step through that window, into the asylum, and into the swirling, luminous heart of one of the world's most beloved paintings, Vincent Van Gogh's Starry Night. To understand the profound turbulence in the sky, we must first understand the man who painted it. Vincent Wilhelm van Gogh was born on March 30th, 1853, in Zundert, a rural village in the Netherlands. But he was in fact the second Vincent van Gogh. The first, his older brother, was stillborn exactly 1 year earlier and on the same very date. Vincent grew up walking past a headstone in the churchyard that bore his own name. Just for a second, try to imagine the psychological weight of that. To be a living replacement, a ghost walking in your own name from your very first breath. He was an intense, red-headed, solitary child. Before he was an artist, he was a man desperately searching for a purpose. He worked for the international art dealers, first in The Hague and then in London and Paris. At some point during this time period, he fell in deep, unrequited love with his landlady's daughter, and then, burning with desperate evangelical faith, he tried to follow his father's footsteps and become a preacher to the impoverished miners of Borinage in Belgium. There he went beyond mere piety. He gave away his food, his clothes, his money, and even his own bed, often sleeping rough on straw mattresses in a tiny shack. He sketched the miners, their bent backs, their weary faces, with a raw, empathetic line. But the church authorities dismissed him for this very extremism, for being too devout, for being too radical, for undermining the dignity of the priesthood. It was a shattering failure that left him spiritually and emotionally bankrupt. So where does a soul go when its one burning purpose is extinguished? For Vincent, the answer was found in the ashes of his failure. In a moment of profound clarity, he turned his religious fervour towards a new altar, art. At 27, he wrote to his younger brother and lifelong confidant, Theo, "I'll have to tell you what I'm going to become, a painter." His early work in the Netherlands, like the sombre masterpiece The Potato Eaters, was dark, heavy in earth tones, ochres, umbers, and olive greens. It was the art of soil, of shadow, of substance. But what happens when a man who has only known grey is suddenly plunged into a rainbow? In 1886, he moved to Paris to live with Theo, who was now a successful art dealer, and his world exploded. He encountered the vibrant palettes of the Impressionists, Monet, Renoir, Picasso. He discovered the bold, flat planes of Japanese woodwork prints, and he began to see colour not as a descriptive tool, but as a language of emotion. He wrote to his sister, saying, "Instead of trying to produce exactly what I see before me, I use colour more arbitrary to express myself more forcibly." But the pace of Paris, the arguments with fellow artists like Gauguin, and the relentless social scene exhausted his nervous temperament. Chasing a dream of a studio of the South, a utopian artistic brotherhood, he boarded a train in February 1888, heading for the radiant light of Arles. Arles, in Provence, was his Japan. The Mediterranean light was blinding. The sunflowers were like molten suns. The blossoming orchids, a riot of pink and white. He painted with furious, almost frantic joy. The yellow house, the night cafe, his simple bedroom and all. He was prolific, producing over 200 paintings in just 15 months. He even convinced Paul Gauguin to join him in October 1888. For 9 intense weeks they painted side by side, debated art theory, in dreams of their artistic fraternity, but their temperaments were oil and water. Gauguin was a theorist, a symbolist. Vincent Van Gogh, on the other hand, was an instinctual, emotional force. The tension culminated on the 9th of December 23, 1888, after a violent argument. Vincent suffered a catastrophic psychological breakdown. The exact details of this are surrounded in mystery, but the outcome is not. He mutilated a portion of his own left ear with a razor. Gauguin fled back to Paris. The dream of the studio was over. Vincent was hospitalized in Arles, a stranger to himself, suffering from what he called the attacks. But what was actually happening to him? Modern diagnosis, pieced together from his letters and hospital records, are speculative but point to a clinical condition. He experienced periods of intense, hyperproductive clarity, followed by profound collapses characterized by hallucinations, both auditory and visual, paranoia, seizures, and periods of catatonia. He would sometimes lose all sense of his own identity. There have been many potential diagnoses proposed by medical historians. These include temporal lobe epilepsy, bipolar disorder, and the severe impact of chronic absinthe use. After several more crises, and fearing for his own safety and the safety of others, Vincent made a monumentous decision. On May 8, 1889, he voluntarily committed himself to the asylum Saint-Paul-du-Moselle, just outside the village of St.Remy du Provence. Here he wrote to Theo, "I am not unfit for life in the world, but I am unfit for the life of freedom. I feel happier in a closed cell." His world contracted to the grounds of the former 12th century monastery. He was given a Spartan, cell-like room on the second floor, measuring roughly 4 by 3.5 meters. His days were governed by a strict institutional routine, meals at set times, walks in the walled garden. He was one of a dozen male inpatients, and in his lucid periods he was highly functional, a quiet observer. And as we look at his most famous painting, The Starry Night, we might wonder, what did he see on those walks? And what was his view from that famous window? History tells us he saw a wheat field that rolled right up to the asylum walls, the dramatic limestone foothills of the Alpine mountains, and the gnarled ancient olive grove. He saw the towering funereal forms of the cypress trees, which he described as black spots in the sunny landscape. In this place of enforced confinement, his imagination and his connection to the natural world became his ultimate freedom. Painting was therefore his therapy, his anchor to sanity, and from that barred window he witnessed a celestial vision he would later describe in a letter to Theo. "This morning I saw the countryside from my window a long time before sunrise, with nothing but the morning star, which looked very big. That star was Venus, shining with extraordinary brilliance." But here lies the most crucial key to understanding Starry Night. He did not paint in front of that view. He painted in the daylight of his studio during June of 1889. He even wrote that he had a new study of a starry sky. So you might ask, is this a real sky? And to that, the answer would be no, because it's not a topographical recording. It's a memory and a feeling of that sky, masterfully synthesized and filtered through his imagination, his isolation, his knowledge of astronomical principles, and his deep longing. In this sense, it's an inward landscape, a cosmic self-portrait. The village below is largely invented, a fusion of memory and reality, with its church spire pointing heavenward like a prayer. So let's take a closer look at the painting. The sky is painted like a river, a whirlpool of 11 swirling nebulae. The stars and the exaggerated crescent moon are not distant points of light, but pulsing, molten stars, each trapped in a brilliant vibrating halo of gold and white. The brushstrokes are thick, physical, and almost sculptural. You can feel the thrust and the twist of the brush, the layers of paint built up with deliberate force. This is turbulence, the divine frenzy in the painting. Below, the village sleeps. The rooftops are a dark blue. The church spire, a distinctly Dutch touch in the heart of France, reaches upwards. The houses are dark, the colours are muted. This is the quiet, still anchored part of the painting. This is the tranquillity, the world of men at rest. As we gaze upon these two opposing worlds, the turbulent sky and the tranquil village, we must ask ourselves what connects them. What connects the celestial chaos above with the earthly calm below? And the answer, I believe, is that dark, flame like cypress tree in the foreground. It is a shape of mourning, of death, but also of fierce, resilient life. Its curves echoing the swirls of the sky, it acts as a visual conduit, reaching from the solid ground to the celestial fire above. It is Vincent himself, the observer, the conduit between the storm of his own feelings and the peaceful, sleeping world from which he feels profoundly disconnected. Now that we've talked about the emotions in the sky, it's time to understand if there is any objective, scientific reality to those swirling patterns. And the answer to this, quite remarkably, is yes. In 2004, physicist and art historian Dr. James Hall looked at Starry Night and saw something beyond expressionism. He noted the striking resemblance between its swirling patterns and the mathematical equations that describe fluid dynamics, specifically the turbulent flow of liquids and gases. Then, in 2006, a team of researchers from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, led by Dr. Jose Luis Aragon, took it further. They used digital analysis to show that the luminance, the distribution of light and dark in Van Gogh's turbulent skies, precisely matched the mathematical structure of Kolmogorov's theory of turbulence. So, what does this mean? Did Van Gogh, in his heightened, almost feverish state of perception, somehow intuit the hidden order of governs cosmic chaos? Well, it appears so. It appears he wasn't just painting a pretty night, he was painting the very energy and structure of a turbulent universe. The turbulence he felt inside was a perfect mirror for the natural turbulence that spins galaxies and governs the flow of wind and water. We often mythicize his madness, but in Starry Night we see not a man out of control, but a man imposing a fierce, rhythmic control on the canvas. In this sense, then, he is using the very motion of his brushstrokes to structure and make sense of the chaos of his emotions. So, if the painting isn't pure chaos, what is it? This is where the paint becomes prayer. Having been rejected by the institutional church, he found his own way to worship. He once confessed to Theo, "When I have a terrible need of, shall I say the word, religion, then I go out and I paint the stars." His canvas had become his chapel, his pigments his hymn, his brush his conduit for communion. The swirling sky then is not a scream of anguish, but a devout, passionate, and structured attempt to touch the face of God, to merge with the infinite, is an act of spiritual transcendence, creating their own shimmering topography. This wasn't just a style, it was a way of making his emotions tangible, giving them a mass and volume. Then there's his line work. Look closely at the cypress tree. It's not drawn and then filled in. It's constructed with a series of coiling upward strokes of dark green and black, as if the tree itself is growing and moving on the canvas. He uses rhythmic and repetitive marks everywhere, creating unified, vibrant energy across the entire painting. And his colour use was revolutionary. He was a master of symbolic, contrasting colour. He famously used complementary pairs, blue and orange, yellow and violet, placed side by side to create maximum visual vibration. In Starry Night, the cool, deep blues and greens of the night are set electrically alive by the brilliant, hot yellows, oranges, and whites of the stars and moon. He died at age 37, having sold perhaps one or two paintings. Starry Night was one of about 150 works he created in his final prolific year, and he considered it a failure, telling Theo he had no need for it to be seen. After his death, the painting was among the hundreds of works sent to Theo in Paris. When Theo died just 6 months later, the monumental task of managing Vincent's legacy fell to his widow, Joanna. She was the unsung hero, storing the works, meticulously cataloguing them, organising exhibits, and slowly introducing his art to a skeptical world. The painting passed through several hands within the Netherlands before gaining international attention. However, its big break came in 1911 when it was introduced in a major Van Gogh exhibition in Amsterdam. But its true international debut was in 1935 when it was first featured in a landmark exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. The American public was utterly captivated. The painting was a sensation, and the Museum of Modern Art officially acquired the Starry Night. Its journey from forgotten canvas in a provincial asylum to the crown jewel in Manhattan is a story of shifting taste, passionate advocacy, and the slow eventual triumph of radical vision. So, what is the ultimate lesson for us? Here in our own turbulent times, what can this painting, born of confinement and crisis over 130 years ago, possibly say to us now? Starry Night has evolved from the canvas. It has become a postcard, a dorm room poster, a t shirt, and even an emoji. It has been referenced in films and has been the subject of countless songs and poems. It has become the symbol for creativity and mental health struggle and the beauty of the night sky. In our digital age of distraction and anxiety, its legacy is more relevant than ever. It stands as a profound monument to deep, solitary attention. It is a reminder from a place of confinement, suffering, and a profound personal struggle can come a vision of boundless cosmic freedom and sublime beauty. The creative act, Starry Night teaches us, is not about achieving perfect calm. It's about finding the rhythm and the tranquility within the turbulence. It is, as Vincent did, about taking your pain, your fear, and your longing, and through disciplined, passionate work, transforming it into a prayer and offering it up to the world. Above St.Remy, the stars still turn, and the cypress tree still stands, and in a museum in New York, a painted sky on a canvas just over 2 feet high continues to swirl for a man who once wrote, in a final powerful letter to his brother, "In spite of everything, I shall rise again." Starry Night is that rising. It's more than a masterpiece. It's a testament to the human spirit, its ability to transform deep suffering into sublime beauty. A moment where paint becomes prayer, turbulence found tranquility, and a man looking through bars showed us the whole glorious spinning universe. And that's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me. I'm Nicola, and this has been The Art of the Matter. Until next time, keep looking, keep creating, and remember, every masterpiece begins with a single thoughtful brushstroke.